Alright everyone, we start off today predictably talking about this Facebook-fed Glowie story, which is the fake whistleblower that's breaking everything open about Facebook's algorithms and everything. By the way, very coincidental timing with the Twitch leaks. It's very, very funny to see how little money some people have to be paid in order to completely sell out their independent content. Here's the thing. Links in the description, by the way, to a couple of these stories. First, we found out that this so-called whistleblower, at the very least is a massive political partisan, has donated dozens of times to leftoid groups and people, including AOC, of course. So this is a far leftist. Ideological bias, I think, is part of this story. I'll get into whether it's literally a Fed op or whether it's a Fed op using someone who's just disillusioned and far left and insane. We'll get past that for now. Then we found out the whistleblower, whose name is Frances Haugen, was part of the same team that helped suppress the Hunter Biden laptop story, you know, the biggest political scandal of the decade. Suppressed that and called it disinfo and fake news and kept it off of Facebook, much like they did on Twitter and YouTube, by the way, to a lesser extent the latter. You'll remember, at the time it was said to be fake. But of course, there was never any evidence that it was fake. No journalistic outlet ever attempted to cover the story or ever attempted to dig deeper into it. None of them wanted to look at the hard drives, etc. We now know they are objectively, absolutely, positively real. The Hunter Biden laptop scandal was bigger even than initially reported by the handful of journos that would even touch the goddamn story. That was suppressed, unlike the Russia hoax. That's openly promoted on these sites, despite having been proven multiple times by multiple congressional committees, the FBI, the New York State's attorney, and a bunch of others to have been fucking horseshit. In fact, even some of the people testifying against Trump in general are saying, oh no, there's never any evidence that he worked with the Russians. Anyway, that's not all. Then we find out that she's working with one of Obama's people from before. Now, first and foremost, before I go into the two possibility sort of thing here that would explain the so-called whistleblowing, which isn't what it is. It's political propaganda, and it's meant to censor the internet more and gain more authoritarian controls because they're losing control of the narrative yet again. Keep in mind, if you're watching this video on YouTube, there will be a pinned comment down below with the links to 4 other video hosting sites that I use. I make 2 exclusive videos every day. They go on those sites. They don't end up on YouTube. Here are the 2 possibilities. The first possibility is this is a deep state fed Glowie op. And the second possibility is that this is a disgruntled far leftoid who is taken in by leftoid propaganda, genuinely believes that the fact that Ben Shapiro is capable of making some milquetoast rhinocon opinion on a Facebook page and getting airplay there because he's not extreme, he's milquetoast moderate, that because of that, Facebook is endorsing right-wing evil and violence and Hitler will come back from the grave and kill everyone. If you believe that, it would make sense that you would consider all of this bullshit to be whistleblowing. But we've already known this for years. By the way, when the entire legacy media and the political complex, and going before the Senate and stuff, line up this quickly for the so-called whistleblower when they're telling you 50-60% the same exact shit you already knew anyway, Facebook manipulates algorithms, Facebook targets children, Facebook sells user data, etc., 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 isn't that a little bit fishy? Anyone find it a little bit mysterious that it's page A, front page news worldwide by the same groups that would suppress the Hunter Biden laptop story, you know, an actual political scandal, literally linked, in this case, to Facebook. When the person who's doing the whistleblowing is literally part of that same integrity team, which has no goddamn integrity, this is the reason I haven't used Facebook actively in several years, that just smells to high hell. It doesn't make sense. So the first possibility is that it's centrally organized. This dichotomy holds true for a lot of things like this. That is that, you know, this is an FBI op, a CIA op, or an Obama deep state sort of thing going on. The neoliberals are using propaganda directly to try to influence public opinion, to try to sway people into thinking you need to regulate these sites more. See, they don't want to do what they should do, which is break apart the vertical monopolies, let real free speech operate the way that it always did on the internet, and that would solve all of these problems. It's harder to have a bunch of misinfo when you don't have as centralized an internet. If instead of having 1 or 2 major social media sites, there are dozens of them, your propaganda gets slowed way down. Nobody seems to be discussing this very real fact. Of course, when you have 6 or 7 sites controlling basically the entire internet, that makes propaganda a little bit easier. Again, you're being sold a pig in a poke. You're being sold a false premise. A cure for a disease that was caused by hyperregulation and by differential tax treatment, especially by the state of California, to these companies, allowing them to become monopolistic, to bully smaller competitors, is why they became so centralized that the propaganda actually began to take root. Instead of trying to hyper-regulate the problem you yourself created, government, it would make more sense to eliminate the initial problem. Not the symptom, but the underlying disease. But that's not what happens. Because if they can use it to their advantage, damn right they're going to do so. You can look forward to them to try to hyper-regulate the internet. Or at the very least, they'll browbeat the big tech leaders in order to get them to hyper-regulate themselves. Anyone that tries to stand outside of that little circle will be hounded and pounded. Maybe Zuckerberg finally had enough and said, look, I'm not going to get, I mean, all the boomers on my site, I've already got all their user data. I need fresh blood, which means that I'm going to have to pretend to be a maverick here. It'd be funny. Maybe his programming went astray. Maybe somebody reprogrammed Zuckerberg and put a little bit of his left libertarianism back into his fucking thick skull. Anyway, the other possibility, and I think arguably more likely, is this isn't a central attack on the internet. It's a side swipe at the internet. Here's what I mean. Imagine you got the leftoid, worked with Facebook, part of the integrity team, has all the receipts and stuff. She's livid because Ben Shapiro exists there, essentially. There are people that she disagrees with that are on Facebook. Ergo, Facebook is a den of goddamn Nazis and far-right extremists. Obviously, Zuckerberg is a far-right extremist. Just ignore the donations that he makes to the Democratic Party every single year. This individual goes nuts and starts rambling about this, and it sort of, because, if you're working with Facebook's teams, big tech and big politics, rub elbows. You meet Obama's dude, and you set up a strategy. Yeah, we can get you before the Senate. You can air all of your grievances. We're really concerned about your problem with Ben Shapiro or Bill Kristol being on this website. We have a problem with that, too. Now, of course, that's not why you do it. You don't give a shit if Ben Shapiro's there. Hell, if Ben Shapiro weren't there, if there were no milquetoast rhinos left on Facebook, you couldn't convince all the leftoids that it needed to be regulated. You want those extremists there. This is why there are still alt-right remnants on Twitter. They want them there. It gives them a future justification in order to censor the site more. But you don't censor the actual problem that you've identified. You start using that as an excuse to go after other people that you actually have a problem with, or simply to control the narrative more. YouTube is doing this. I am explicitly suppressed by YouTube. Look up some of my video titles verbatim. Copy them out from the goddamn page itself. See if my video is always the first one there. Oftentimes there are 2 or 3 legacy media bullshit pieces ahead of it. Sometimes they don't even have anything to do with the title itself. The tagging system has been basically rendered useless unless you type in a spurged out manner and don't know how to spell. But anyway, in just a couple of 24-hour periods, this so-called whistleblower, being held up as a whistleblower, fucking Senate committee and 60 Minutes piece and all this stuff, has been blown way out of proportion hyperbolically. Meanwhile, when you get ultimately legitimate whistleblowing, you had this from Veritas multiple times, you never get 60 Minutes, you never get the ABC front page, you never get a Senate committee, you are ignored. I wonder why that could be, because it breaks the narrative. The narrative they're trying to set up is the internet is a very goonish, ghoulish, far-right extremist place filled with slime and Nazis and Russian propagandists and fucking drug users and human traffickers, and we need to regulate it more. Because somehow the internet for decades, that wasn't a problem. Only recently did it become a problem, but they will ignore the fundamental reason why some of those problems actually exist. It's because you centralize the internet by making monopolies. Again, through deferential treatment towards a handful of big tech firms, even to up into and including literally going after legally some of the smaller alternatives. BitChute gets investigated by the British Ofcom, for example. I think they have recently dropped that case, if I recall correctly. Gets headhunted after. Meanwhile, Twitter, up until recently was hosting, illicit pornography. and they're not investigated. Courts clear them and say, well, it's not their fault. Meanwhile, BitChute, responsible for everything posted there, has to regulate itself. The SEC, this is about crypto, trying to headhunt after Library, after Odyssey, because of its blockchain-based methodology. Meanwhile, when Facebook literally tries to create a one world cryptocurrency and literally write itself millions or billions of dollars in instantaneous value just by getting other companies aboard, nothing happens except the government mumbles about it might not be a good idea. Zuckerberg gets the hint and backs off. But the SEC doesn't go in and say, oh, we need to look at Facebook servers now. We need to see if there's something screwy going on with the Russians or whatever. Rumble gets called far right, despite hosting the same fucking goddamn content by and large that YouTube hosts. Are you seeing a pattern here? It's all a bunch of horse shit to try to ruin the internet and take people like me with independent voices who are inconvenient to the narrative and capable of reaching large numbers of people to take us offline and to silence us. And to keep all of you goddamn ignorant and watching CNN or the Young Turks or some other bullshit fed broadcasting corporation. That's about all. Peace out.